Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your Sun in Aquarius and Capricorn rising. These are adjacent signs in astrology, but the one thing that they have in common is a ruler of Saturn. For Capricorn, it's the sole ruler of that sign, and for Aquarius, it's the traditional ruler until Uranus came along. And I think that most people, when they think of the attributes of Aquarius, they're going to think of Uranus because Uranus is a sign that is associated with being unpredictable, with being eccentric, and that naturally lends itself to being a nonconformist and, being like an awakener. And actually that's part of it. Like the people who have moved the world, they have not been the conformists in society. They've been the people that have gone against the grain. So Saturn, being about authority figures and all of that, ruling the 10th house, and it's your career and it's your status, that really is a contrast to what the Uranian energy is. So when you look at somebody who possesses the sun in this awakening kind of position, and yet their ascendant is in Capricorn, it can be quite interesting. But again, Saturn is that common denominator. So the person, because there's that consistency there, maybe it makes that Aquarius person trend more in a conservative way. So let's talk about the ascendant first, which is the cusp of the first house of the self, the body. It can be your mannerisms. It can be the way that you carry yourself, your demeanor, the way that you act around other people. And Capricorn, so your ruler is Saturn because of the ascendant. But you could also include Uranus because it is your sun sign. You could say both of those, but in terms of the chart ruler, it is going to be Saturn. And so in terms of how a person carries themselves, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Saturnine, but it's kind of like descriptive word to describe somebody who is rather morose. Maybe they're overly serious. And that certainly could be how you present yourself to others. And this is very important because it may cause a lot of this combination of people to feel frustrated in life because Aquarians are people, a people person. Aquarius rules the 11th house of friendships and groups. All air signs, by virtue of being air signs, tend to be very social because those signs are associated with communication. Well, unless you're talking to yourself, you're communicating to other people. And also, just like the fire signs, they're yang energy or masculine energy. So yang energy tends to be extroverted. So you have that, and yet Capricorn is earth, it's yin, it's feminine. So this could be a combination where the person's actually more inhibited. There's an inhibition with Saturn. And it might even lend itself sometimes to insecurity. Although I think with any kind of Capricorn person, it's going to be perhaps covered up with a facade or a veneer of professionalism. The person has a very capable facade, and this can, harken back to childhood, where you're really like you seem wiser than your years. Saturn is old age. So but it is that interesting phenomenon where the person may appear old when they're young and then they get younger. I think about that line from Bob Dylan. I was so much older than I'm younger than that now, from one of his songs. And people always were like grabbed by that lyric, but they kind of didn't understand what that meant. And you probably will totally understand what that means. And I think part of that elderly, or whatever you want to call it, influence too, can be that you have the weight of the world on you sometimes. When you're ruled by Saturn like this with Capricorn rising, you may actually have to fend for yourself. You may have to really be resourceful to get your needs met because those around you may not provide it. There's a strong element with Saturn of self-reliance. And I personally think that this is something good. And I don't think that it's some people are going to feel, now you have to look at your moon sign, because depending, if you have a moon, for instance, in water, which is Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, for instance, you might feel as if you were emotionally neglected because of any kind of, I don't know if it would be neglect or just, I guess you could call it neglect on the part of the parent, but they might have done so not in a malicious way, or just like in a not caring kind of a way. Maybe they worked long hours and you had to make your own breakfast and lunch, or you had to make sure that you did your homework. They weren't there, and if you went through a rebellious phase, maybe you flunked out of high school or something, and they were not there to kind of keep you in line, and you thought, what if they did that? I would be so much further now. I think that in certain cases, the emotional part, the person can, I would say in some cases, misinterpret it as the parent not caring personally, or the parent had an addiction or mental illness. Who knows? But I think overall it can be good in the sense that it requires the child or the teenager to really learn how to survive. Well, hopefully it's not that, life or death, but you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Because I have heard so many stories where children were like that, and they really became successful as adults because they had to from an early age really pick up the slack, and it gave them, they learned how to rely on themselves. And I don't want to make light of people because I think that is a difficult ascendant sometimes because of the coldness factor. You may feel like you come into this world and there is coldness around you. And Aquarians can be cold. But what I have heard about, and I'm talking about sun sign Aquarians, but what I've heard about Aquarians is that they're aloof but friendly, but I think, and which I think is hilarious. So this is what I'm saying about the frustration you may be feeling, because your ascendant is your calling card, and other people may get this impression that you are a cold fish, and also that you are hard. There's a hard ass quality, a hard boiled quality of Capricorn, but you really, I think a lot of Capricorns are quite sensitive underneath. And even as earth signs, because I typically don't think of earth signs as sensitive, but for some reason I get that feeling with Capricorn. That's just my personal, uh, I don't know, intuition, whatever you want to call it, that I really feel like you, as a, now this isn't your sun sign, so it's not the same type of influence 100%, but it is a very important point. It's the one of the angular houses, so it does exert a lot of influence. So the other thing that, well, I just want to, because I keep talking about this kind of cold exterior, but the reason I want to really emphasize that is because you are such a friendly person, again, in a kind of like a universal type of a way, but you do tend to be more geared towards social interactions. You may feel like other people think that you're unfriendly and that and or maybe you're shy or like socially inhibited, and that makes you feel like you can't be as social as you would want to be. And so anyway, in terms of physical appearance, one of the I was talking about that professional demeanor, and that could be represented in clothing. I've said this before with Capricorn rising that I love. It seems like there is this fashion sense in terms of professional dress. Now, being a woman, I'm looking at it from the female perspective. I see these women and they have like these very clean lines, with Capricorn, very like what do you call it? Traditional, not trendy, and just very, very like polished. And I'm not just talking about those office clothes that are kind of like gross, but I'm talking about when it's fashionable as well. It's just like I just admire that so much. Very put together, and then looking very tasteful, very, but kind of conservative. Like you won't see people with this women with this combination probably with their boobs hanging out or their butt cheeks hanging out of their jeans. They're going to tend to be more covered up, but they still come across in a very eye-catching way, in their own way, but they're being more conservative, that kind of thing. So there's also, in terms of the facial, I think that the one thing I think of is high cheekbones for the women. I mean, for men and women, and even like somebody like David Bowie. But you know what? To come to think, David Bowie I think he was a sun sign Capricorn, and he had like these really high cheekbones. And Marlene Dietrich, I can't think of like. I think Faye Dunaway was a Capricorn, but I can't think of like modern Capricorn women, so I can't really cite those. So the thing is with the Capricorn ascendant, the person is going to tend to make an impression that is very easy to really be accepted by others, because this world is a world where your professional life is so much a part of things. So the image that you're projecting, if you're projecting this type of image, it's going to be well received. And from the time these children are young, they may be given more credit, more respect by their elders or even maybe their peers in some way, of being like, but especially older people who are like, saying, who do we trust? Who can we give the responsibility to in a group of children? They might get the call because they feel that these children are more mature than the other children their age. And they might be, or you might be. In terms of your sun sign, Aquarius is a sign that likes to shake things up and that doesn't want the status quo. So you can see that it's very contradictory. But this is the funny thing about Aquarius, is that it doesn't mind being a contrarian. It doesn't mind, kind of leaving people guessing, because that's part of its nature, is to kind of be a nonconformist. And, that unpredictability is what makes Aquarius what it is, the character that person is. But in this case, because it has this traditional backbone, you might be more traditional. And if you are raised by hippies, or, when I say hippies for this modern age, I'm talking about people that are, maybe they're like new agey types of people, what have you. I don't know what the modern hippie is like, but the point is that you might be the conservative one. You might be raised, I was going to say maybe your mama dresses like a hoochie. I was going to say your mom dresses like a hoochie mama, or your father is I don't know, I was going to say like a mobster, gangster, or something like that. Well, anything that's like outside of what we would consider respectability, or whatever you want to call it, and you are the Boy Scout or Girl Scout, and you're very by the book, and that is how you rebel. So it doesn't matter what that external environment is, you have that ability. Now, I would say if you are Capricorn rising, there might be a tendency to come from a family that is somehow, maybe they're prominent. And in some cases, it can be very difficult because, like, for instance, if you're the child of a pastor or maybe a politician, and you have that pressure to maintain that image of the perfect child, or the child who is getting straight A's, because you have to make them look good. That could definitely be the case too. I was focusing on having to raise yourself, but if you grew up with affluence, and Saturn is representing that kind of, the stature, because of that 10th house connection, that Saturn rules the 10th house in astrology, that has to do with your status. If it's on the upwardly mobile side of things, you may, be raised. I actually know somebody who is Capricorn rising, who was actually raised by the maid or the nanny, not raised by the actual parents most of the time. The mother was off, doing that kind of high society socializing. And that, I think that really had an indelible effect on that person's outlook on life. I think, this is another thing too that you have to really look at with Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn, even, whether it's Sun, Mercury, Ascendant, Moon, is pessimism, because Saturn can be, and this is like an interesting kind of exploration of words, because pessimism can be described as negativity, as seeing the glass half empty, lack consciousness in terms of like what you think is possible. But cynicism I mean, these are kind of like similar. I wouldn't necessarily call them synonymous. Cynicism is being kind of jaded. And you may have this attitude that, people are just going to let you down. This is kind of like a Capricornian thing. And this is one of the shadow sides of Capricorn, is this tendency to look at the dark side of human nature and, see the worst in others. Like, just assume, and in a strain, in a certain sense, it's actually a projection, because your own shadow side. You know what you have the tendency or possibility to do, because there can be stinginess with Capricorn, or you could say with Saturn, and this could apply to Aquarius as well because of that connection, where there can be stinginess, a lack of generosity. And generosity isn't just with resources, like monetary resources. It can also be with a person's affection. A person who's cold is stingy with their affection. A person who is who doesn't have a good word to say about others, or who finds it like hard or awkward to compliment people, is stingy with their verbal affection. So you have to really look at that if you have those tendencies, because the reason that this is the case is because Saturn, Capricorn, is about realism. And this can actually be a good thing about. This is actually one of the best things about Capricorn, is that the person has a sober outlook, and they're not going to tend to be unrealistic about life. And this can really help them achieve what they want professionally, because they're approaching it in a practical way. So with the sun sign, speaking of like achievements with the sun sign Aquarius, the kind of things that you excel in that are not necessarily connected to Capricorn, but the Capricorn energy can be very disciplined and ambitious. So this can assure success, because Capricorn is a cardinal sign, which means it's a self-starter and initiates projects. And Aquarius is a fixed sign, so it sustains itself. It's not a quitter. It persists. There are, all the fixed signs are stubborn. We always talk about Taurus, but all the other fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, they are also fixed signs. And they have, amazing endurance. They don't allow setbacks to stop them from, pursuing things. So you're going to probably be highly intelligent being an Aquarian. You may have, this combination though, you may gravitate towards something. It's possible that you gravitate towards business because you're something financial, because your sun is going to either be in the first house or the second house. And the second house is the house of earned income. And you may, but you may pursue something that makes a lot of money. Maybe it'll be in some other area, but there's like a scientific bent, or even like the mad inventor of Aquarius, that Aquarius is associated with. So you may be interested in those topics. But Aquarius is intuitive, is very intuitive. I think, you would have to look more at other placements to get a feel for whether this type of person would be. I actually think the stock market might be something that you gravitate towards. So even an investment banker or something like that, that might be something where you can use your intuitive abilities for something that's connected to money. But there's a lot of things that you would be good at. And having a fine mind, that can make the person able to be good at many different, to fit in to many different fields. So in terms of love, the depending on how you're raised, well, I'll just say anybody who has Capricorn rising may come from or may favor a traditional type of lifestyle. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, it might be something you're familiar with, but you may try to maybe fight against that, and you think, I don't want to have that. That's always a possibility. But with you actually might even be somebody who marries late. Who knows? Because being ruled by Saturn, it can mean delays. And that might be something that is for the best. Because maybe you're very ambitious, and being with somebody and having like a full-time relationship and then having children, that might be something that is too much of a distraction, and you just want to establish yourself. And you also may need time to become that social butterfly, which is more of your nature. Although I usually say Libra is a social butterfly, or even maybe Gemini. Aquarius is friendly, and you do like to socialize, but there's always that detachment there that is very, very pronounced. And with this combination, because you do have Capricorn at the ascendant, you may even be a bit, not necessarily wanting to just, you might feel it's even a waste of time to socialize that much. But as you get older and go through your first Saturn return, there's that Saturn return, which is probably an even more significant event, because transits that are with our ruler can be very significant. So your Saturn returns might be very significant for you. But I feel like after the first Saturn return, you become more like your sun sign. So you may start to youth instead of age, and let your hair down. And, if you started at a very young age establishing yourself, who knows, by the time you finish your first Saturn return, you may have a lot of things like your foundations down pat. Maybe you've already bought your first home because you started working. Maybe you started a business when you were 20 years old, and you're well established by the time you're 30. So this combination can be great for that sort of thing, for becoming more laid back as you get older. And that would then maybe you feel like, hey, I'm going to start a family, and you have fun with that. You're not like stressed out because you already have all your ducks in a row. So yeah, I do think that this combination can be very disciplined and very organized. Alrighty then. I hope that you enjoyed this and resonated with it. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Thank you for listening. Bye.